everyone, and welcome back to another College Chaps podcast. On this episode, we're going to look back at probably the greatest college football game of all time. Yes, we're going to deep dive Boston College's narrow victory over Western Kentucky, but first we are the College Chaps, and I'm joined by a trio of informed, opinionated, and funny chaps. Ollie, Alex, and Chris. How are you all?
Absolute cheap shot. We were talking before. We hit record about how Alex was going to be the one doing all the baiting today during this episode, and then George just comes out swinging for the fences with some Boston College slander. I'm doing really well, thank you, George. Last Tuesday, without college football for the foreseeable future, I can't wait for the return of midday Conference US action. I don't know what we call the Conference USA equivalent of Maxim, but we've got to give it a catchy name at some point. So yeah, good times.
And after that intro from Ollie that dragged on, that's all the time we have, and we'll see you next week.
Chris, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I just started looking up because the fact that Ollie brought up the Tuesday action. So this means that today is the last day that we have without college football until November 22nd. That's awesome. I'm doing great. Also, I know that you guys had on a good friend of mine, Seth Saunders, last week. He's in mourning right now, a Georgia fan. So I'm doing much better than I think. I think that was your last guest, and I also appreciate you guys having me come on after Seth instead of Dabo Swinney or Vern Lundquist or some other asshole that is way more famous than I am.
Well, we timed this. I think we timed this to perfection, right? Because we could have had you on last week to talk about the lead up to what was clearly going to be the biggest game that college football has ever seen. But now we get to have you after the greatest game that college football has ever seen. So That is where we're going to start. I'm sure we will get to Boston College at some point around about the 34-minute mark. But Chris, it's hard to put into words, right? Because I think there's a lot of hyperbole goes on about the game. The game was just one of these games which had everything to it. People will now start to, and rightly so, compare it with other great college football games. But tell us what your thoughts are about that game.
It's hard to put into words. I don't like Georgia at all. I will not mince any words with that. I grew up in a household where this is just, I've told you guys this off air. I don't know if your listeners are, but just my level of white trash. My dad was a diehard Alabama fan. My first stepdad was a Georgia season ticket holder. So I just sided with my dad on that one. And I just haven't liked Georgia since I was a kid. I respect the program. I think Kirby Smart's phenomenal. I think they are a phenomenal football team and program. I hate their fans. I get so tired of hearing about them. And for them to come in and listen, I'm also part of the same group that's always like, yeah, like I have thought that this Bama reign against Georgia specifically was going to be over since 2020. I've been saying that for 5 years, and every time they meet, I'm wrong. And it was just, Milroe was fantastic, and DeBoer was great. The game plan, they came off a bye week and they looked that good. Georgia looked that bad. It was awesome. Now I will say the amount of fireball that I had and beer when they came back, I had several people ask me, like, what would you have done if they came back? And I was like, I honestly think I was too drunk to even process what was happening. Because you go up 30-7 at the half. So I am waiting for my thumbs to take over. I'm ready to tweet and Instagram and Facebook and just tell everyone, like, double birds, see you later. And I was so fired up. And then all of a sudden they were ahead for like 6 seconds. And it was like, listen, I know I've dragged on already with this. The funniest part of the whole thing, besides ripping their hearts out again, the funniest part of the whole thing is that Ryan Williams caught the pass with 2:26 left on the clock. So it's second 26 all over again. Like, it is just chef's kiss.
It was meant to be. I wrote a little bit about this week, and it was a tale of two halves in so many respects. But you talk about the halftime score and actually the first quarter score, where everything that Alabama touched turned golden, and everything Georgia touched turned to something that wasn't golden. What worked for Alabama in that first quarter specifically? Why did they stretch into such an incredible lead? Because I don't think anybody on this earth expected them to have raced away to that lead in the first quarter.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I think it's Milroe. I think it's Milroe. I have gone, like, I think outside his parents, I don't know if anyone has been this blindly supportive of Jalen Milroe. And part of it is being stubborn, and part of it is like, like wanting to to stand up for the quarterback of your team. But this kid, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a Bama quarterback thing or if it's a Jalen Milroe thing, but there's like few quarterbacks and players that are as polarizing as this kid for some reason. And to what I can attest, or what I can account for, he's never done anything off the field that's bad. All he's done is won. He's never lost to an SEC team that was an SEC team at the time, Alex. Since he has been the starting quarterback, right? Like, he's been phenomenal. Like, he's been a phenomenal quarterback. And I think that going into this season, for whatever reason, you still have people be like, oh, well, he can't throw the ball. He's not going to be good in DeBoer's offense. He's not going to be like, he's good at throwing the ball deep, but he can't make reads. All night on Saturday, whether it was a first read, a second read, or it was a check down, or like a design play, he not only was incredible with his placement of every single ball, but also the fact that like there were several reads where they would come in on a zero blitz, or they had a single high safety and he had man across the front, and then like he would check down to a tight end. The tight ends, it's the most they've been involved the entire season. And it was really impressive. I thought that Milroe came in and played that well. And then the other part of it was the defense that we all thought was going to take a giant step back. You lose a guy that you want to be your defensive coordinator. He's now a Georgia's 8th co-defensive coordinator on their staff. And you're still able to find a way with all the coaching talent that you had across the sideline. They looked better on both sides of the ball for about 48 minutes of that game. And it was awesome.
Ollie, do you agree?
Yeah, it's funny because after the first quarter, my attention was starting to wander to like other games, and we built. We talked about Alabama, Georgia for the most part of last week's podcast, and we talked about where the game would be won, and we talked about individual players and everything, and everything was hyped up, and we talked about it as being the game of the season and the game of the year, and how fundamental it was to the landscape of the 2024 college football season. And it got to the end of the first quarter and was like, well, this game's fucking over. Let's see what's happening with Penn State and Illinois, because that's a close game with repercussions in the Big Ten. And then obviously it all came back, but it was Jalen Milroe, and I wrote about the Heisman Trophy this afternoon and how the Heisman Trophy is won in late October, is won in November.
Right.
But I don't think you'll see a performance in college football this year other than maybe everything that Travis Hunter does. But we know what the Heisman is. It's a quarterback-driven award. Like, you won't see a performance that deserves the Heisman from a quarterback more than Jalen Milroe. Georgia just did not have an answer to him. They did not have an answer to his ability as a passer. They did not have an answer to his ability as an athlete. They could not stop him. It didn't matter where he ran. No one was stopping him. It didn't matter where he threw. No one was stopping him. And I think between that and the emergence of Ryan Williams as like a legitimate college football, like top tier wide receiver at the age of 17 years old, like we're watching this year 2 wide receivers in Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State and Ryan Williams at Alabama, who are like as good as anything I think we've seen as true freshmen in college football. And I think that was the big takeaway from me is like if a defense like Georgia's that has been so historically good can't stop Jalen Milroe, who else is stopping Jalen Milroe this year? Like, Texas has got a great defense. Michigan has got didn't look like it for large parts against Minnesota, but Michigan has got a great defense. Ohio State has got a defense that has consistently improved year on year since we used to talk about them being awful defensively. But you don't see any of those teams, like right now, you can't argue that any of those teams can stop Jalen Milroe. And that was my big takeaway from Alabama, Georgia.
What makes this game so appealing when we talk about where it ranks in the greatest games of all time is the second half, right? Because Alabama just raced away to, if it'd been a boxing match, it'd been over at halftime, right? I mean, quite simply. Georgia made some changes at halftime, got back into the game. Chris said, led for 6 seconds, whatever it was, and then Alabama won the game at the end. But this is intriguing, right? I think this is intriguing for the College Football Playoff Committee, for example. Alex, what does this tell us about Alabama, and what does it tell us about Georgia? Do we know a whole lot more about these two teams than we knew a week ago.
I think a couple of things that I take away from this game: getting home advantage in the first round of the playoff is massive
Yeah.
because that atmosphere was crazy. And you're not telling me that playoff atmospheres are going to be bigger than that. That of course they are. So getting that home advantage in round one is massive. I think both of these teams deserve to be in the college football playoff. Georgia showed it could take a punch and come back, right? And yeah, for all of Bama's impressiveness getting there and getting into such a lead, it came down to a one-score game right at the end that was decided on essentially a coin flip, right? And it was a great play
No,
to
not right,
go
but
out
that's
and win
fine.
the
You keep
game.
talking. Yeah, not right.
But like that play could go either way.
Do you know how it went though?
I actually don't because I was
It
in the
once
car
again
driving
went
to
in
Nottingham
Alabama's
when it went
favor.
down. So I was coaching my national team when it went down, so I didn't stay up and watch it. But for that game to still be a one-score game or to still go right down to the wire after such a big lead was got into by Bama. Like it's a big thing for Georgia. They showed that they can still kind of hang at this level. But they're probably not as invincible as they have been the last few years.
I don't think that you're wrong. I really don't. The objective part of me looks at that game and you're like, man, you had 3 turnovers, you had a safety, you had like all these things that are, we always say this afterwards. Oh my gosh, so uncharacteristic of Georgia. But like, here's the thing, for whatever reason, this is what they do against Alabama every fucking time they play Alabama. Like every time they play Alabama, this is what happens. And it's like, you go back to the 2008 game, the blackout when they were down 31-0 at half. You can talk about 2012 when they had a lead and they blew it because of like whatever against like, freshman running backs and freshman receivers. 2015 when they were favored, like every single time. I think that they're a really good football team. I think that they're a really good football team, and you have to credit them for not rolling over and dying, because that's something we've also seen them do. Like last year in the SEC championship game, it was just bizarre. It's the same as in 2021 in Atlanta. It was just bizarre. But like, so yeah, credit them for not rolling over and dying. But it is a 60-minute football game. So where were you for the first 30 minutes coming off a bye week after the Kentucky scare where you had all this stuff? And then on top of all that, guys, like you had all the top, like everything's in front of you for Georgia coming off that thing in Atlanta last year and being like, you're 3-point loss away from three-peating in the to win a national championship. And all of their fans, and I think and a lot of players and people like us probably think that, yeah, they would have a pretty good chance to win the national title last year if that game doesn't happen. But it does, and it keeps continuing to happen. It's amazing.
Little brother syndrome.
It is.
It's essentially what it is. Yeah, you can be great, but when you look at another program just down the road that's better than you are, or that has been more successful than you are, that you're trying to chase the whole time, you get into this mindset that you start to doubt yourself whether you can actually beat them. And that's the only reason that this keeps happening to the Georgia program. There has to be that element of self-doubt in there that sticks in their brains. And that's a cultural thing that's passed down from class to class. You see it in college sports all the time. Right? That's why you have these big long runs with big programs that they just can't seem to get over the hump. And yeah, the culture of it gets passed down in these long rivalries, and the self-doubt is crippling.
Yeah,
to Georgia in this.
But I suppose when you look at all great sporting teams and great athletes over the years, they're always better when they're out in front, right? And they don't succumb to the pressure. When you look at the way that Alabama attacked Georgia, in many ways, I thought Georgia would have come out and attack Alabama like that in the first quarter, right? So I guess what I'm saying here is that Georgia finds itself under incredibly intense pressure right from the get-go, and that's how they reacted to it. They did not react well. They got back into the game, I guess, maybe at halftime, being able to, reset and make changes, but they didn't take the pressure well. So I'm guessing what I'm saying is that Alabama did their job in that respect. How many other teams have Georgia played over the last 2-3 seasons that have brought that element of pressure?
Yeah, and I wonder if Kirby's got it a bit wrong in this game coming in with his messaging. Georgia just needed to avoid getting blown out. They're still going to make the playoff after this loss, right? They're still going to be in. You're not going to have an expanded playoff without them. They're as good as they are. And I wonder if they almost came in a little bit too defensive, a little bit lacking in risk taking with this idea of let's just not get blown out. Let's try and keep it close, see if we can steal the game at the end. And you can't come in and play like that at the top level. You have to come in and play balls to the wall, go out there and really attack, especially if you're going into a rabid stadium like it was there in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night.
The best job of coaching I have ever seen Kirby Smart do, the greatest job of coaching we've ever seen Kirby Smart do. And I told you idiots that you thought we were going to go for 30 minutes. We're already 20 minutes in. We talked about one game. This is why I love you guys. So no, the greatest job I've ever seen him do is coaching. And you remember that game in 2021 in the national championship in Indianapolis? Georgia gets this weird fumble. Bama goes in and scores. They take an 18-17 or 18-16 lead or whatever it was. At that moment, I remember looking on Twitter and seeing my buddy Graham Coffey echo what a lot of people were saying, which was it might be time to bring in JT Daniels. And it was like, here we go again with this dumb, stupid narrative. Like, we're going to talk about bringing in JT Daniels at this point. And what they could, and Kirby didn't do that, obviously. But what he also could have done was he could have gone in, he could have run the football, he could have, gone through like an offensive, like checking down and made safe, easy throws for Stetson, who wasn't great in that game at that point. And they went out, and him and Monken drew up 4 plays. The first one was a throw from one side of the field to the other hash on an out route for like 20-something yards. And they went 4 plays, 67 yards, touchdown, take the lead, never gave it back. Like, that kind of like aggressive mentality from Kirby is the best job I've ever seen him do as a coach. And ever since then, like, he talks about, we're not going to be hunted. And it's like, I mean, you got out hunted by a guy that wears cargo shorts on Saturday, a guy that doesn't cuss. You got beat up by Dabo's like younger brother. Like that's what happened to you. It's sad, but I love it.
Well, before we'll wrap this up, but what it does makes the game in Austin very, very interesting, because to Alex's point, Georgia have to go in there and make a performance. A 10-2 team could make the playoff, but a 10-2 team with 2 heavy defeats won't. So anyway, let's go and talk about football on the other coast, Ollie.
Just one thing we haven't talked about really was Carson Beck's performance in that first half, because for a guy who's supposed to be the potential number 1 overall pick, like, he was shaky. He was everything. Carson Beck was everything on Saturday night that he is supposed to be the polar opposite of. He's supposed to be composed. He's supposed to be a good decision maker, and he was none of those things. But anyway, I'm bored of talking about Georgia.
Ollie, did he redeem himself in the second half? I'm intrigued. Did he do enough in the second half? Well, they
didn't win, George, so he didn't completely redeem himself, did he?
And also, he's now 0-2. And like, I remember saying this before the game. I was like, dude, Carson Beck is like 14 or 16 touchdowns and 1 interception of like total touchdowns and to interception ratio in like the 9 games he's had against ranked opponents. But then I think it was Parker Fleming, who does tremendous work on Twitter, brought something up. He's like, dude, they played 1 offense or 1 defense, I think, 1 defense inside of the top 60 in ranked opponents over like the last year. Like the defenses they faced, like, they might have been ranked opponents, but the defenses they played were terrible. And he's kind of feasted off them.
Exactly. Let's talk about some proper football and a proper quarterback in UNLV's Hodge Malik Williams, because UNLV is rolling despite what we can only call a college football landscape altering situation with Matthew Sluka opting to take his red shirt after playing 3 games. Are they better with Hodge Malik Williams, Chris, do we think? Do we think UNLV is a serious college football playoff contender? Do you think they win the Mountain West? Talk to me about UNLV, Chris Marler.
So here's the thing. College football and its fans need UNLV this year. And that sounds crazy, but we need UNLV, and we need this story to be something that is talked about in college football, because we're so tired of hearing about NIL stuff. We're so tired of hearing about conference realignment and all this, like the stuff that's like the TV contracts. Everything has been revolved around money for so long in this sport, and none of it is in the best interest of the fans. They finally started doing stuff that's in the best interest for the players, but nothing has been in the best interest for the fans at all. And a UNLV team, after what their quarterback did, and I understand that, like, there's two sides of every story. The truth is somewhere in the middle, blah. That's what my therapist tells me all the time, whatever. But like, at the same time, this person is like, it's clear to me that like both sides are at fault. And I think that game day talked about it last week. It was like sometimes I think Reese Davis said, like, sometimes you got to wear the fastball in the ribs, man. Like sometimes you have to sit here and say, like, just take the L. And they didn't do that. What UNLV did last week on the heels of that was awesome. Like, it was awesome. And I think I speak for so many college football fans when I say, I want this to be the feel-good story of college football, where they make the playoff. And I don't know if they get boat race in the 12 versus 5 matchup or whatever, but it would be great for college football if those guys can run the table against, after what happened with that I'll just say it, shithead kid that made, decision based off of his own stuff. I hate it. I just hate it. Probably put a little bit too drastic there and inappropriate. That's my bad.
We expect nothing else.
I have a little retort, because I also think the kids are shithead, but I think the coaches are shithead as well. Like, I hate the idea, and obviously you hear stories. I'm quite well connected in the NCAA world in a different sport, and I hear some of the stories that come out of that sport about kids being offered cars, but having to commit on that first visit weekend, and allegedly, before anyone gets me into trouble. And like, I hate this idea of pressuring kids with money to make big life choices. Now, in the US, it's better than it is over here, because they can transfer, and they can transfer quite easily nowadays, as is happening. But I just I hate the idea of kids going to college for money. I hate the idea of kids being promised a million things just to come and play. When you're 16, 17 years old, you cannot make those decisions. Clearly, the families of these kids who are being offered more money than they potentially would make in 10 years cannot make those decisions clearly. Like, at the minute, it's a mess, and it needs more governance, because if stuff like this is happening and one kid has come out with it, then it's happening to 15, 20 others who haven't said anything. So, like, it's rough, and it's not a good look for either person. I don't think the kid did it the right way. Like, make your bones before the season starts at that point. But yeah, it's a mess, and it doesn't look great for college football. And I think Chris is right. And that hurt saying that. I think Chris is right. Like, we need UNLV to come out and be successful, to kind of gloss over it, and hopefully let the powers that be change this for the better.
There's an incredible amount of naivety on all parts, and I guess this will be across all of college football, right? I mean, we've seen in the NFL that adults can't make adult life choices, to be perfectly frank, right? So how are we expecting 18 to 21-year-old kids to do it? I know, much maligned, and there was a lot of criticism last weekend about the role of agents, and I don't want to make this any worse, but there has to be some sort of legality to these things. I mean, accepting a place on a conversation just doesn't ring true to me. And I know how this all works, Alex, but good Lord, I mean, and we saw it. Listen, it's not new. We saw it with Jaden Rashada, right? He came across to Florida, and that imploded, and arguably Florida still reeling from that situation. I don't know what the answer is, but there needs to be some sort of tightening up of the
someone needs to remind Brett McMurphy at Action Network that that happened at Florida, because apparently it wouldn't happen in the SEC.
Brett McMurphy he's on one this year, man. I don't think I've ever seen him act this openly. I don't even know the right word. It's like he's just vengeful, like on like all this different stuff. It's so weird.
Oh, we've heard giving people their flowers. Well, yeah, Brett Murphy's like doing the opposite of that right now.
Yeah, always.
Let's talk Ole Miss because you know there was loads of chat from Ole Miss fans before the game about how they were going to be ready for this early start. It's 11 a.m. Kickoff. Like they had their big old jugs of Bloody Mary that they were going to use to tailgate with. Well, obviously, someone forgot to deliver a couple of big jugs of Bloody Marys to the locker room because the Ole Miss team were not ready for this game, getting upset on Saturday. Lane Kiffin talks a lot, and the thing that happens when you talk a lot and you lose, I can tell you from personal experience, is that you get a bit embarrassed and you get a bit under pressure. And the pressure I'm under, or I have been under in the past, is nothing compared to what it's like to coach football at school in the SEC.
Yeah.
Is he under pressure, especially if Ole Miss don't make the playoff?
I don't think he's under pressure if they like right now. If they don't make the playoff, yeah, and deservingly so, because like you had a schedule that was like you look at the way the schedule was set up for everyone in the conference and in the SEC, outside of Texas, Mizzou, and Ole Miss, every other team and fan base looked at their schedule and was like, God, this is brutal. Like whether it's Georgia plays 3 top 6 teams all on the road. Like South Carolina has their stuff. Like even Auburn has like kind of like a lighter schedule this year. I think South Carolina had they had the 11th hardest schedule in the conference this year, according to ESPN, which was still the 17th hardest in the country, right? I think that Ole Miss, when they came into this season, it felt like they were a shoo-in. And then you go out in your first 4 games and you blow the doors off everybody. I think it does speak a lot about the fact it's like, listen, Lane, you have shown that you've like kind of matured and all this stuff around your career. Like you're well liked again. You're not drinking. Like he's like sober and he's very proud about that, and as he should be. But it's like maybe we take a break from posting get ready with me's with your daughter as like fun and wholesome as that is, because they look bad when you lose. And at some point, that fan base is going to get tired of losing and think, listen, this is a fan base that didn't go to a Sugar Bowl or a January 1st Bowl from 1961 or something like that to 2002. Like they are very used to losing. They can go 8-4 with anybody. So if he can't get them to double-digit wins, which they haven't had back-to-back double-digit win seasons, I think maybe ever, they're going to be in trouble, or he's going to be in trouble.
I'm going to whisper this, Chris, but is Kentucky a better team than we all thought after the South Carolina game? And is the SEC doing what other conferences have done in the past and cannibalizing?
It's so hard because I think I fell victim to this finally for the first time in a while too, which was like, we just believe what we want to believe so much in the preseason, and the confirmation bias of what we think we know. And like, guys, think about the trickle down effect of what happened with that South Carolina game, because it was South Carolina played Old Dominion horribly and got very lucky and won. So of course they're going to lose to Kentucky. Then they blow Kentucky out. And if you watch that game was closer than the score was for sure. And then, so now we're like, oh, well, Kentucky obviously sucks. Then Kentucky plays Georgia close. And it's not even just us that thought that they were better than they were. ESPN FPI immediately changes Georgia's win projections, and they're going to lose 3 games now all of a sudden. And you're like, so I don't know. I think Kentucky can be better. They have the talent. Like, I mean, Ollie, you know this better than anyone. From like a draft standpoint, I think Kentucky's front 7 is one of the best in the SEC, and I think I think you can make the case it's better than Bama's. Like that's one of the reasons they were able to control that game against Georgia so well. But I don't know, the offense is bad. Like Brock Vandagriff was bad. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a cannibalizing thing, because I think I think that you will still see at the end of the year, they will force four SEC teams in, whether it's right or wrong in the playoff, no matter what. And I'm not here to say whether that's a good thing or bad thing or anything in between, but they will find a way to do some dumb shit like that and put 4 teams in, whether it's Missouri, if Missouri goes 10-2, or if it's Georgia going 9-3, they will figure out a way to make it happen.
All it does for me is underline the fact that college football is better when no one is good.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
I was going to say, I think at the moment you could almost see 5 SEC teams in the college football playoff: Texas, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, and then like a team like Missouri or Ole Miss or LSU sneaks in that
Yeah.
back end, like that 11 spot. So, yeah, I was going to make a joke. I was going to make a joke about counting the number of Kentucky draft prospects on JJ Weaver's hands, but I think we'll leave that gag where it belongs, because I've spoke with JJ Weaver. He's a great kid. Talk about playoff. Leave the SEC out of it, because again, bored of talking about the SEC. It's all we ever talk about on this show because of George and his ingrained biases. Let's talk about the AAC. Let's talk about Army and Navy. Let's talk about triple option football and the fact that those two are 4-0 for the first time since 1945, which I think is awesome. It's not a traditional triple option. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on with Bryson Daly and Blake Horvath. But do you think one of those two teams could potentially be in the college football playoff, win the AAC, and get in there?
Listen, we're on the brink of World War III, and you're telling me that Army and Navy are both undefeated? Like, let's enter at your own risk, boys. This is what happens.
Prerequisite. It's a prerequisite for war.
We'll go back to back World War champs. We'll make shirts about it and all sorts of dumb hats. I can't wait. No, I think it would be, again, I think another great story in football. Imagine this, guys. Like, you know, my dad is one of the dumbest people I know, and he would say, like, he didn't make a ton of great points, okay? But one of the things he used to always say was he hated the Army-Navy game, which I thought was stupid. But the reason why made sense to me, because it was like, it just means it's the end of the season, and it sucks because it's like that. Now the season, you waited 9 months for it. It finally got here, and just like that, it's over. Like, we're already in October, right? But imagine a world where 11-0 Army and 11-0 Navy are meeting for a shot at the playoff. Like, I have goosebumps just talking about it. Like, that would be awesome. The UNLV story would be great. This would be better. Listen, you guys are over across the pond, all that good stuff, and don't have to see all the dumb shit that we have to over here. But in an election year, it would be awesome to have Army and Navy both rise up to be 11-0, and like, because it's already insufferable and it has been for months, and it would be nice to have something positive like that would unite the country. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great. And like, you know, like you said, like, it's not the same old Army Navy teams that are just triple option banging into each other for a 17-16 game. Like, it should be a lot of fun.
Navy quarterback Blake Horvath leads the country in explosive passing plays. Like, so that to Roger Staubach in 1963 when he won the Heisman for Navy. Like, there's a kid at Navy. Yards. There's a kid at Navy absolutely tearing it up in the passing game.
Unreal.
I can just imagine the 11-0 scenario going into that Army-Navy game, college game day on wherever it is they're going to be, and then the political candidates fighting over each other to see who's going to be the guest picker on that particular episode. That would be something. Right, let's we've already run significantly over time. Let's jump to our tickets over 20 segment. Chris, did you do this the last time we were on? I can't remember.
No, you guys confused me. Like, acting like I'm good with money at all. What are y'all talking? What are you doing? Like, you just sent me a bunch. I was like, this has to be
so.
The economy.
Let me tell you the story. Let me tell you the story behind Ticks Under 20, right?
Okay.
So on the ESPN website, when you go down and you look at the schedule of games, there is a tickets from X amount of dollars number. And a couple of years ago, we found tickets from $1 for a game. I think it was a Maction game on like a Tuesday. Or it might have even been tickets from $0. Right. For a game. And ever since, that little section on the ESPN website has just fascinated us. So now we try and find the best game we can for under $20.
Okay.
But Oliver has taken this to a whole new level, right? So now, as you see, there are multiple dates on that list, and this is confusing our guests no end, to allow Oliver to do some sort of cross-country, cross-trek, where he fits as many games into his long weekend as he possibly can. He has become the de facto Lee Corso of this program because he's now going to be the last person to show us his picks and probably put a mascot head on at the top of it. Anyway, Alex, you're going to go first and show Chris the way because Chris has now got that panicked look in his face, going, "Oh my God!"
I'm just desperately searching right now.
What am I doing?
The answer is almost always Georgia Tech because Georgia Tech tickets are like $9.
Like looking through, there's not actually that many interesting locations to go and visit. As Ollie will shake his head at me when I say that, but yeah, it's a rough slate in terms of interesting places to visit in the US. And I think getting the chance to see Army play live, this Army team that's pretty good for $11 when they are at Tulsa on Saturday. That's a pretty solid. That's a pretty solid game that I'd be pretty happy to go and see. Tulsa's not that far from Dallas and some decent places down in Texas, so you could probably make a little bit of a trip out ahead in there and getting to see this potentially historic Army team play. That sounds like a good Saturday for me for $11.
Okay. Is it just this week? Why did you send me 18 weeks of games, George?
Well, you see, because this now allows Oliver. Normally we do 2 picks, right? But now Oliver, it allows him to do his whole kind of weaving across the country, driving for 18 hours to get to a college football game. That's his kind of.
Okay.
And this is important.
I've got it.
This is important because you have to be able to travel between the games that you choose that you're going to. So you can't just go, I'm just going to see Army at Tulsa on Saturday at noon, and then I'm going to go and watch Tulane against UAB at 1 p.m. You can't do that. You can't get between the games.
And
there's some strict rules. And if you can't fly, you have to drive or bus or something. You can't fly there.
Okay. There's no trains in the
Georgia
US,
State and Old Dominion is like a mile and a half from the house, so we should be good there. But yeah, this is okay. Well, I can give you mine. I think I have a good one here.
Go for it.
All right, October 5th, I'm going out to Stanford for Virginia Tech Stanford because Palo Alto is beautiful. Beautiful game. And then I tell you what I'm going to do off the record and ruin the game already. Then I'm going to hop on over to Berkeley and go watch the Woke versus Coke game between Cal and Miami. I'm gonna go hang out with those AI generated freaks from Cal and the Calgorithm. And then what I'll say we do, listen, part of me, and then what I'll do is I'll hop on a Greyhound or a what do you call it, a train, and it'll take me a week, but I'll make it. I'll get October 12th. I will head on over to, we're gonna be under budget. Oh no, I'm sorry, Friday, October 11th, Northwestern at Maryland. Because I've always wanted to go see a game at Maryland, and it's on the coast. Probably get into Baltimore, go get some crab legs, maybe watch some baseball. That's my pick. Did I play the game right?
You did. You couldn't make the effort to. You need to get back south, right? So from Maryland, you could have got back down to, I don't know, who can tell, but I'm not sure. We're really just winding up to Oliver's. Show us your pad again, Ollie. Just how much detail have you gone into in this? We've got 20 minutes before we've taken up an hour, so
I love it.
Take a screenshot of it.
Go for it, Ollie.
Are you not playing today, George?
No, we're running short of time. I'll give this a miss.
Okay. So Thursday, October the 3rd is where we start our trip, and we start in Troy, Alabama, which I believe is where I actually ended up the last time we played Tickets Under 20. I believe that was the last game I chose. So I've been there for, I don't know, 2 weeks. So Texas State at Troy. I'd love to see Jordan McLeod slinging it. Troy have been not great this season, but Texas State have been pretty decent, even though they lost to Sam Houston last weekend in a nail biter. Then there's no games that I can afford to go to on Friday. So I'm going to drive 760 miles for 11 and a half hours, if you prefer timing. Through Alabama, through Mississippi, stop off in Memphis maybe a little bit, through Arkansas to meet Alex at Tulsa for the Saturday, October 5th, Tulsa at Army. I'm only staying for the first half though, because I'm going to watch Army rack up, and it'll be a quick first half because Army are playing as well. So Army are going to rack up a 31-7 lead at the half. So I'll make the 5.5 hour drive to Jonesboro. 371 miles for those counting at home. For South Alabama at Arkansas State, I might miss the first few plays of that game, but give me Gio Lopez versus Jalen Rayner, two of the most underrated young quarterbacks in college football. And South Alabama, apart from that loss to LSU, on a bit of a roll at the moment as well. So they should be positioned nicely for a nice Sunbelt win on the road in Jonesboro. And then we've got, by my reckoning, 3 days to get from Jonesboro to Lynchburg, 771 miles, a total 11 hour 49 drive, where we can stop off in Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville. We can even get into Asheville to help with the clear up after Hurricane Helene. And group of 5 guys are doing a great fundraising for the people of Asheville and the surrounding areas, as is my good friend Ed Lane on the Virginia Talk Radio Network. He's doing a fundraiser for the people there as well. So we can go and help them clear up and fundraise there as we make our way to the CUSA Classic, FIU at Liberty. Keon Jenkins versus Caden Salter on a Tuesday night. Give me all of that action. I want it all. And then Wednesday, we don't have a game in our ticket range price window. So we're going to drive to Bowling Green, Kentucky for the Thursday night. Western Kentucky hosting UTEP. Western Kentucky looking back to their good old self under Tyson Helton. UTEP looking terrible. Western Kentucky looking like they're going to be a Conference USA contender. That's 520 miles, that drive from Lynchburg to Bowling Green, by the way. We're not done yet.
All right.
After that game, we're driving 11 hours and 30 minutes through the night from Bowling Green to Tampa, 765 miles, from Memphis at South Florida. We talked about American Athletic Conference earlier. Memphis still with a shot to win that championship, despite the loss to Navy. USF haven't been great this season, but Alex Golesh's offense, Byron Brown at quarterback, should be an entertaining game. And then, finally, we'll stay in Florida. We'll take the short trip up the I-4 for Cincinnati against UCF. Get me a game in the bounce house. Get me the UCF running game against a Cincinnati defense that's only given up 2 rushing touchdowns. Should be a good all Big 12 clash on a Saturday afternoon in Orlando. And that, my friends, is how you do a road trip.
That was pretty impressive.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're not going to last long in this economy. I'm telling you that right now.
Well, good job. Speed impresses you.
Well, Ollie's used to gas prices in the UK as opposed to the US, so you're probably going to.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm going to pretend like I know what that means. I'm worldly. I'm cultured.
Gas costs about 1.5 times as much here as it does in the US.
Oh, that's not good.
No, that's not good. Anyway, we've significantly run over. Ollie brings
Sorry, George.
That's okay, Chris. Don't you worry. Ollie brings up a really good point about those who are affected by Hurricane Helene. And for those on this side of the pond, thankfully, we don't have to worry about extreme weather. So our hearts go out to everybody who's been affected. And you can donate to help out at the Red Cross if you can afford to do so. It's been awesome having Chris back on. We love catching up with him. We know that you've got a lot on just now, Chris. Tell our listeners what you are up to, where we can find you, what you've got coming up.
Well, right now, Twitter is Vern Dumquist. Felt like that was fair after losing a third Twitter account. I switched from Vern Funquist to Vern Dumquist. But got the Fourth and Wrong podcast that we've been doing for years. One of my best friends, Tyler Huck. It's been a blast. The actual job stuff. I've been covering social media and covering the SEC for ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge, as well as LouisianaSports.net. It's a new website they launched. And then I'm covering South Carolina specifically for the Locked On Network and talking about Gamecock football and all that good stuff every day. And then also all tied up with Clint Lamb, which is a thing with Cover Crimson and the Next Round Live guys from Birmingham covering Alabama football. So all over the place, but still talking a lot of SEC stuff and somehow balancing it all, which is wild. So, but it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on, man.
It's been awesome. Please pass on our condolences to Tyler, who is a An ardent Florida State fan. It's not been good for them. Not been good.
Hey, and real quick, I gotta say it every time I'm on here. I know we're running late, George, but you guys just bring me so much joy, and I'm so happy when you guys asked me to come on here, and I'm proud of how good how big the show has gotten, and getting to see you guys do what you love, even though it's in another place. So we'll see you guys soon. We'll see you next year at Media Days.
I hope so, if not before that. That's all from us on this episode. I'm gonna forget about all the other nonsense that we do at this point about social media and the like. But it has been awesome to have Chris back with us. We really do. One of the great things about this podcast, maybe the unexpected thing about this podcast when we first started, I don't think any of us realised we were going to make such good friends out of it. And Chris is definitely at the top of that list. Thanks to Chris, Alex and Ollie for their brilliant input. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.